pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just want to remind everybody that these proceedings are being recorded for the sole purposes of preparing accurate written minutes. Recordings are overwritten following approval of the minutes, eliminating all unofficial records of these proceedings. All right, we'll start out with guests. Any guests?
Commissioner? Good, we're good.
Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 16th, 2025?
Second.
Jerry second.
So first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion pass. On to municipal outreach planning.
I'm not really sure how we want to go about reaching out to the municipalities or grouping them together. I can pull up the county website and like a parcel viewer if we want to look at like the different regions kind of. We can go like that. In terms of outreach, like I can call, email, and mail all of them things. I don't know if anyone has any other suggestions. What would be better, especially for
I know our township did make that announcement at our township meeting that we did receive the flyer. So that was mentioned. I like the idea of regional like outreach, you know, I think we're all in different areas too, so I think utilizing the people that are on the board possibly might be because, you know, we have faces that are familiar with the southern part of the county and northern part of the county, so I think that might be maybe a good familiar face coming in and speaking about it would be pretty good.
I think we probably should talk about the approach or the philosophy of, you know, the grant for this, and Dawn can give us more details. Is providing outreach and technical assistance. So it's almost like whatever the municipalities need, and we know this program is new, so we have the flyer, they can look at the manual. You know, I think it's just hearing from each of you as to what you think, how do we approach these municipalities and with what content? I mean, where do we start with them?
Do I ask to set up like a meeting with a group of them?
That's
From
what I
like
would
certain
do.
regions, and we can look at the map and kind of try and group them together.
Yeah, I think you do better when you reach more people at once, right? You don't want to do everybody, but you know, like we said, you know, what are we gonna provide for them to ease their mind and how to go about what we're, you know, and that's important.
And I know the new county comprehensive plan and the Greenway plan, I guess, is in final form, right? They didn't have a meeting today, but they actually sent out the final draft, I guess.
So the steering committee got the draft to review and to then comment back. I think now the draft, if I'm not mistaken, gets released to the public now for comment. I know the steering committee got the first look at it, but now I think it's gonna go out to the public. And then we'll probably be moving on to adoption and stuff like that. So that is gonna be coming out. I don't know about the Greenway plan. I have to double check with them. Cause we did it in 2 volumes. We did a comprehensive plan and a Greenway plan together, but 2 separate documents. But I believe that one should be coming right behind it then. I'll find out more for the next meeting for you guys on all that with the comp plan and the Greenway plan.
And when you say Greenway, it's Greenway and open space, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Greenway and open space, yeah.
Gotcha.
Greenway trails and open space.
Anna, did you finish up the
What have you done? You finished that flyer or, but you
Yeah.
haven't made any contact or reached out at this point?
No.
That's where we're at. Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
and
for
under-
like the specific municipal training.
Right.
I gave them a flyer about just the program in general, the one that I gave to you guys, it just had like a few minor tweaks to it. And then I gave them a flyer about the webinar, which no one got back to me about, so we just recorded it and it's on the website.
So you just emailed that information or you?
Yeah, and then I emailed that information too.
So nobody got back to you,
No,
not a single person?
I sent it out a little bit late, but like not as much ahead of time as the first one, but still, I didn't hear back.
I think we should have a discussion about, and it was mentioned today at the commissioners meeting about municipal planning and not that we're doing the planning part of it, but before we get into the mechanics of how to do a land acquisition project, I don't know, maybe hearing from Anne with her experience in other counties, and Dawn, like, what's the best approach here? It's like, this is, the open space program gets into when you know what you want to preserve, and then how do you make that happen? It's almost like we need to give, do we start with the 50-foot view of what their plan says, even what the draft of the county plan says? How do they look at their municipality? And, you know, I don't know, I'm just throwing out ideas here.
I know our comprehensive plan hasn't been done in a long time. And I know it was brought to our attention to redo our comprehensive plan and, we did our zoning and we did our saldo, but the comprehensive plan didn't come before it, which sometimes is probably better, but we're sort of antiquated.
What are the dates of those multi-municipal plans? I'm sure they're
There's a few of them.
6, 8, 10 years old.
Yeah, most of them are well, definitely.
So you're part of a multi-municipal planning effort that was done that really has some good content.
If I can make a suggestion, is we're trying to figure out, like, break down what the regions are, but for that regional meeting and maybe, Anna and I had already talked about doing kind of like the conservation 101 thing for them, and then also the information about the program and how they would apply to the program. But also, I think we could probably, once the Greenway and open space plan is done, we can also take that to them and say, here's what, as countywide, what the recommendations are for protection in greenways. Let's look at the map of the area, this region, and, try and work with them to figure out what are your priorities and how can we then move forward to maybe go after some of those priorities.
So with that being said, isn't it, the timing of it's gonna be after it's approved, right?
Yeah, so when do you think the plan, the Greenway and open space part of it will be adopted?
That'll probably come following the comp plan.
But I mean, this spring?
As adopted, the draft. Wouldn't expect it to be much more than a month or two, given that we just had the last review for the steering committee for the comp plan was only a month. And like I said, they're just, I could see them just rolling on top of each other. I could get back to the advisory board on that either sometime next week. After I talk to a consultant and find out what the schedule is on that.
So then naturally, there are certain greenways that you're looking to do, right, or to try to have happen. Would it be easy to say, okay, because this part of the plan has this municipality, this township, let's try to get them together so that we could present this to them and they're a part of something that the county's looking to do.
Well, I know from what I read, when I read through the draft, they did start looking at clustering potential regional areas. So that was in the draft plan. That's where we would probably look first at, like, trying to put, there's like 3 right here, maybe 4 right here, where they all share like common regional things, and that's what my recommendation would be to Anna to look at those. That's probably what we would do.
Dave and group, it's Ann on the screen. I like Dawn's suggestions of tying it into the Greenway plan and Anna's approach of working regionally. I think people really like looking at maps, and if the consultant had even a very first draft of these greenways, maybe there's some public component to their contract anyway, and it could serve dual duty of the consultant getting input and the open space program being promoted. I think I've also found that when you hold these regional meetings, it falls on someone, likely Anna, to just start a conversation beforehand by, calling the borough or township manager during working hours and saying, hey, have you heard about the program? And we're going to assemble these regional meetings and, find out if they're even talking about any projects or have any landowners they're aware of. And then Anna has that relationship. And when the municipality hears something, they're going to pick up the phone. And I know Wildlands, you have some outreach components too. So maybe you coordinate that. But it takes more than just saying we're holding a regional meeting on this date, because they've got a lot of meetings.
Yeah, and the grant funding we have is for both, like Dennis said, for technical assistance and outreach. So I would coordinate with Anna because it makes better sense for us to coordinate what that outreach is gonna be and work together on it. And then above and beyond that, there might be, Wildlands could just reach out directly to certain municipalities if we need to, but kind of formulating that plan to try and reach everybody to make sure that all of the municipalities, whether we catch them at the regional level, which I think would be great if we could, just because everyone can get the input if we have a map on the table, like Ann was saying. And, but then we can also even, go to municipalities individually and, if need be, just show up at one of their meetings and, ask to speak and give a little spiel.
So,
Yeah, that's an idea too, like to go to one of their meetings and let them know what's going on, just a briefing.
And, if we could do all of that, like in the spring and summer of this year, so like everybody's kind of starting from the same page. And, maybe that'd kind of be the impetus for people to find projects to get them going so that, I don't know if by this fall, but maybe by next spring, there might be a couple of municipal projects that are in the works if we're lucky.
Well, I think it would be helpful to take advantage of the projects that we already have in place and, get some media, publicity on it, have them do a story, whether it's Times News, Channel 13, something more than just covering the notes from a commissioners meeting. They approve this. They're always looking for stories and different times that are slow and build up that grassroots interest through those communities that we're trying to reach out to, because those those local township people, they're watching the news and trying to keep their finger on the pulse, or a property owner might come to their meeting, hey, I heard this, it's more of a baseline, get the information out there and generate some interest rather than, like you said, we're holding a meeting. Well, what's it about? I got roads and bridges and everything else to take care of.
And I would say that those regional meetings, we call them workshops, because it's not just us talking to them, it's also getting input and having maps and looking at maps and things. And then in terms of press, I was gonna ask Anna, were you able to get pictures to her?
Yeah.
So there-
she put them up today.
There will be, an article and maybe press from the meeting this morning.
And even social
Yeah, I
media,
saw
I
that.
mean, all these municipalities have Facebook pages and things like that. If they're tap into that and let them know what we're doing. And again, we've got these projects. It's not like,
And
hey,
the one
here's
thing
what
I-
we just started. We're looking for some help here.
The one thing I will say about like talking about the projects we're doing now is that it's one thing to talk about, hey, it's been funded, but until it's done, you don't really, until it's like, I usually don't even like to talk about projects publicly until they're like done and dusted and hey, we've protected this.
Mhm.
Obviously, through the process, when you're getting the funding, there's always announcements about funding.
Sure.
But to me, it's not real until we actually.
Oh,
close on the
absolutely. We
project.
want to make sure that the paperwork's done
Yeah.
first, but in the meantime, you can be putting together a plan, so to speak, or a strategy. You know, so you'd be ready to pull the trigger instead of waiting till that's done and say, oh geez, we missed an opportunity here to get our message out or do our story or.
And because the Natural Lands one is probably closing sooner, do you know when that's closing?
I'm writing Jack Stefferud right now.
Ah.
And our communications director always writes a press release. You don't need to use our press release, but I'd be glad to share it with Anna and everyone else if it helps.
And we do that as well on our end. It's just that I think the Natural Lands, it's probably gonna close a lot sooner because the Lehigh Water Authority Pine Run project probably won't close until the end of the year.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Dawn, we don't count our chickens before they're hatched, so we don't publicize it until the agreement is, until we've closed.
If I can make a suggestion, when we first started doing farmland preservation projects, you know, the first ones that got preserved, there was a press conference and there was a big to-do. So having a formal event, if the landowner is open to it, but I think you make a big rah-rah that this is the first one and really, you know, invite Dave Argyle, invite, you know, Doyle Heffley, invite, you know, the Game Commission folks, whoever wants to be a part of it, that's part of that funding, and get yourself some additional media through their outlets.
I think what you said is excellent. We need, these municipal folks need to see what an example is. What is a success story, just like, and I don't know if anyone else looks at the We Can Serve the newsletter where they just highlight all of, so we need to give some examples, so they need to see what the product is we're talking about. I don't even know if we could use some even older examples.
That don't, just to show what's happened before there was Carbon County funding, the types of projects we're talking about. Since we're not to the point yet of closing of the Carbon County ones, we could certainly do that. We've done a couple in the county, the Drakes Creek one, which went to the Game Commission, and then we had the big Penrose project outside of Weatherly, 2,700 acres, and that went to State Forest.
But East Penn, that was a smaller one, but the Semmel,
Oh, yeah, there was a property on the ridge that part of it went to the Game Commission and part of it went to the township for a trail.
Yeah, we've got Mud Run in Penn Forest.
got some past examples. We even talked about that. I guess we dug up that booklet of stories of people who have preserved their properties. Maybe we could even incorporate that. That's excellent. People need to see, we have no idea what we're talking about of what has happened in a preservation effort by either municipality or land trust.
This is Dan, saving up my thoughts here, so I have a couple of points. One is, yes, we definitely have to promote what we've done and promote other land preservation and give them examples when it's the appropriate time. Right now, we can announce that the funding has been approved, but that's really all we can do. But definitely promoting those in the future, hopefully fairly soon. I think the meetings that you're talking about, the regional meetings, I'm thinking about Carbon County, and I'm thinking that maybe basically the school districts, the municipalities around each school district might be a good group to call together. So you have the Palmerton and the surrounding townships, Cheverly Heights and Jim Thorpe, the whole Panther Valley region and Weatherly. And I think that might exclude one or two townships that maybe the kids go to school in Hazelton or Whitehaven or something like that. So we'd have to make sure we don't miss those. But I was thinking that might be a nice organic way to group the things because they're kind of used to working together already as a school district. And the other thing I wanted to say was I think we have to make sure that we have our expectations set kind of properly. Yes, we want to encourage townships to pursue this. Yes, we want to educate them. Yes, we want to promote this, but land deals don't ever happen overnight. Well, I shouldn't say ever. I do know one that did, but most of the time they're long, slow processes that go on. So if we're thinking that we're going to have 4 or 5 municipal projects by the end of this year, we're really fooling ourselves. This is the long game, in my opinion. And I think we need to be thinking that way. And so we need to start building this because it takes time. Once the townships know about it and understand it, then there has to be a landowner that wants to sell property for preservation and for the township to have an open space park. So it's slow. So what I'm trying to say is we need to start, but we shouldn't have such high expectations that we'll have all these applications coming in. And the sooner we start, the better, because then the sooner we'll get to the point where there will be some projects out there. But, I think that it's going to be a slow process. And one last thing, when we have the regional meetings, I think that having Anna there and having Don or Dennis there is really good. But I think having all the rest of us there, because it's your neighborhood, it's your region of the county, and the people. It's likely that the supervisors or they know you and so forth. So I think that being there to support the whole process, I think will also be helpful. So those are my thoughts. Now I'll be quiet again for a while.
How active are the municipal planning commissions?
I was thinking the same thing. I know that, every municipality has a planning board that meets once a month, right? And you don't want to hit every one because that would be counting. But going to the planning commission or the planning boards in each municipality and focusing on them because they're the ones that will be initiating a lot or dealing with a lot of this stuff. So getting that outreach good idea, to the planning boards of all the municipalities like Lehighton, everyone that's within Lehighton, say, okay, well, can we coordinate with the high school to do the meeting at the high school? I happen to know people that are on the school board that, maybe that to piggyback off what Dan's saying is, maybe you utilize the district and say, hey, we want to try to get all these boards together to say, hey, please have your board come. So now you would have, like, we had the Westport, Mahoning, Franklin, and Lehighton all there, Perryville, and try to make sure that they're there at least, and then the general public.
It's gonna be time consuming, and I'm looking at Anna here, but going, and I think we've all learned in life that it's all about relationships and getting to know the leadership in each of these communities. And I think going to these planning commission meetings, just meeting people and finding out what they're doing as far as reviewing plans, what their issues are, and getting to meet some people. And I think that personal contact that you build over time is, I mean, how many meetings have we called at the county level and got all the food and drink together and all this stuff? And 5 people show up, it's like, that happens all the time. I'm sorry, maybe I'm being a little negative here, but so it's like building that relationship at the bottom up. Maybe going to some planning commission meetings, getting to meet some folks, getting to understand what their issues are. And then going from there. And I think we also, one thing I picked up today from the commissioners meeting is we have to be careful. This is a county program that has dollars connected to it. But the municipalities, and even though the county greenway plan is a guide, it's not telling them what to do. And I've learned in Carbon County, we gotta be very sensitive that we're not coming in as the county level and kind of being more directive. That they know this program exists and there's funding, but to get the funding, these are the steps you have to do to get to that point. And, that's gonna be the education process, but it's not the county kind of pointing to a property or something specific. It's more of a general education.
And I think that's one of the stigmas as well, though, that the county will do things, but they don't have the outreach to help you get from there to what the county's envisioning, so.
If I may comment on it, I think the Board of Commissioners is kind of like, we constantly complain about the state's overreach. And the county doesn't want to overreach into those municipalities or townships. You elect people to the boards to oversee how you want your borough or town run. That is exactly what Dennis is saying there. So if the board I'll just say Jim Thorpe, because that's, if they want to preserve some land or they want to get involved in this, then that's a decision they have to make. If they choose not to, then that's what their electoral has done. But I think for us going into areas, and that was a key issue with the piece of land today that we took care of, the Pine Run, is to make sure that the municipal authority was on base with that their local leadership favored doing that. Because with this guidelines comes certain, you're tying some hands for future generations. And you want to make sure that decision was made by their local, that we're here as a guide and help. So I mean, that is a key. You're right, Dennis, trying to grow that from the ground up is a long process, and it does take time, and you got to build trust. That's the hardest part. You got to build trust. Just don't assume you're walking as the open space board and everybody on the local front's going to trust you, because you're all good people, but it's just the way it is.
I think of what are they up to?
Right? It's the first, the old story. You don't have a problem until the government shows up.
So what I'm thinking is like, it would be good for me at least, maybe even me and Dawn, to go to some municipal planning meetings, maybe just some council meetings, and just tell them what we're trying to do. We're trying to help them learn how to use the program and maybe see how I can get in contact with them more to set up this regional meeting. Like, I don't know,
Start.
yeah, like at least kind of let all of them know who I am and what I'm like there for, so that I can start an email chain with each group kind of thing, and we can at least get something on the schedule. And then we'll work with getting the school board to hopefully help us host it kind of thing. Does that
And
sound?
the whole issue with maps too, I think, and the county has a great mapping department. And I'm sure there won't be a lot of individual maps that come with the county greenway plan, but there will be composite maps in there that show. So to have maps of their municipality and then the surrounding area. All gets people thinking about what they want to protect.
Yeah, they may not even realize the scope of whether there's opportunity or not, right? I mean,
Right.
but the visual aid would be very helpful to them say, wow, this is something maybe we should be interested in, or it'll help vet out where the bigger opportunities are for everybody.
And maybe we should have a base map of the county that shows all the federal lands, the state lands, the county lands.
Well, I'm sure
Even-
we already probably have that,
Yeah.
that was, I mean, because we created all the maps when we were working through the whole open space program process. So I'm sure we can just, we have those maps already and can update them. It's just a matter of, we don't have a big plotter anymore that can print big maps, so if the county, you guys Jason probably has a plotter, right? Or you guys have a plotter in planning?
I
Yeah.
don't know.
We can always, county's here to assist.
The meeting.
Are you talking an overlay map like you have right sitting there?
Yeah, I have the map for you guys
Okay.
earlier. I brought it in case you wanted to look at that instead of the website today.
And there are a lot of other groups within these municipalities that are oriented towards saving trees or whatever, so that you might have, you know, shade tree commissions as well, to just send something to them. So a lot of times they think that they're alienating from everything that happens.
Mhm.
Town doesn't like that. People looking to save trees and things like that. So
You're the township supervisors, but you might ask, who's the best point of contact here? I know Lee Heighton has a shade tree commission that we've worked with in the past. And
historically as well.
Yeah, that's a start. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Good idea. If Dawn's in favor of going along with you.
We'll figure it out. Yep. So, yeah, formulate a plan, figure it out. Yep.
we can work the plan.
See where the chips fall.
That sounds like a
I've
good
a
start.
different one. Planning work with planning change.
I mean, you have the flyer and everything made up. It's like
Yeah, I can
most of the,
take that.
it's a matter of just finding out when some of their meetings are and getting together with them.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe with that flyer should be a write-up of an example. Whether we use Drake's Creek or we use.
I already
something-
have a note here to look at local stories of preservation projects for a brochure, or booklet sort of thing to. Got a note already, so I'm thinking about it.
Yeah,
What might work.
Dawn, you're amazing.
that's good stuff.
Yeah. Um,
If I, not to, that's not my, but if there's a carbon collaboration and they have a meeting once a month, and there's representatives from every area of the county that come to this exact room to discuss what's happening around the county. So I can tell you those members, not every municipality or every township is represented there, but those who have a vested interest are already at that table. So by going to those representatives right here, they may be able to give you the list or tell you like, who do you want to contact in Bowmanstown? Who do you want to speak to in Lehighton? Who do you want to speak to in Jim Thorpe? Who do you want to speak to in, you know, because there's a very good cross section there. And they're always looking for something to get involved in, you know, and that would definitely be able for them to give some service that's being offered back.
You're talking about the COG, right?
Right, the COG.
Community development.
Could we also could we put something in like Doyle Heffley has that newsletter that comes out? Could we ask him to put something about what's going on in his newsletter?
You can ask Doyle to do whatever you want.
I mean,
I'm not trying to be cruel. but
that letter
Doyle
comes
would
out
have
like
to-
what's going around and going on in the county and.
The same with Senator Argel.
Yeah,
I
same
get
deal.
his emails and he lists all the.
Yeah.
Summarizes all the different projects and
That's what I'm saying,
happenings.
just to get information out.
Yeah. Use all means of the media to promote.
For
We-
that, would you be like? What are you thinking would go in there?
Well,
Just the program information?
yeah, program information and
We could
then
do like an
contact,
example, yeah. and
contact you or,
Okay.
yeah.
It's almost like we have to do a blitz or shotgun approach of getting out the word in multiple ways until it catches on. We have two small videos that, I don't know if Marlene is listening. But that PMVB helped us do with the Nature and Commerce Committee. And they were both, one was on water. I forget what the other one was, but they were like just 30-second clips. That is on the chamber website. I think it's still on the Chamber and Economic Development website. When we were promoting nature and commerce, but it relates directly to the open space program. Jerry McAward did one of them, and I think Kathy Henderson did the other one.
I remember.
Yeah, Dennis, we still have them. So, I mean, we have those files if we could use them. And, you know, I've kind of been listening and thinking through this as well, that when we get to that point, if there's a potential for another video, I can go back to our team. We just would have to schedule it out in advance, but that might be something that we could plan to do, just like we did, you know, with Jerry.
Mhm. Yeah, and maybe it would be with Natural Lands if if that new project it closes. And there's tons of things we could talk about with all the years of lands we've preserved on the Blue Mountain. As just as the initial example.
I know the Rasika project should close in the spring of this year. So that's what Jack has told me. They're hoping to do. So that could work. And keep that on the list.
You could have a vine cutting.
I wish.
Fine.
It can be an Instagram reel.
Yep.
That's what I use.
It's easy to share then.
Yep.
Vine cutting.
Does Carbon County Open Space have an Instagram or
No,
Facebook or anything?
I've thought about that. Like, do we want to do, like I could do something like that.
Yeah, just put the basic information on there again too. If interested, call so-and-so.
I don't know if like the county even has like an Instagram. I know there's a Facebook.
Yeah, county's got Facebook.
But I don't know if there's like an Instagram, and I don't know, like, would Instagram reach municipal officials? Sorry, in the nicest way possible.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna do one, you might as well do the other, because
That's true.
it's still meta.
Oh, right, you can make them do both.
Yeah, so I mean, if you post something, you can post it to both
That's true.
anyway.
Okay.
I don't know if you would need commissioner's approval of doing this.
I'd use all kinds of social
Setting
media
something new.
possible.
Yeah, that was gonna be the next thing. I don't know what sort of approvals you need. I think, well, Jason said GIS has one, right? Because didn't he
Oh.
say that they could promote stuff on their
Yeah,
Facebook?
yeah, they have their own Facebook. So I don't
That's
know,
us.
um,
See what else is.
I don't know, is that
We can
possible?
watch it.
It's possible to get it to the county webpage and get it on the county webpage and get it on the county Facebook page. Obviously, you gotta do some process, explain to you how they go through that.
Okay,
Yeah, we were just wondering if there could be an open space Facebook page,
yeah,
county.
like
open
how
space.
there's a GIS one.
Yeah, we could probably do that.
Yeah.
It's a process we need to go.
Yeah.
Because there has to be
Utilize this stuff, right?
Somebody probably has to approve what goes on.
right,
Whatever.
there has to be,
Whatever social
Planning
media.
commission.
not the
Yeah.
manager, what do they call it? The
A page administrator.
administrator, yeah.
Oh, yeah, like someone has to run the account.
Yeah, so that,
Yeah.
we can sit down and explain.
So I'll look into that, getting some social media.
People can share it.
Where are we at with our sign? First sign that will go up?
So for the sign, I should have brought the program manual, but the program manual says that the applicant makes the sign. And we just provide them like up to 50% funding, like we'll help them pay for it.
So it's just not a standard.
No, it doesn't, that's not what it says.
I know before we were working on kind of what the standard sign would be,
Yeah.
but then generally like, you know, with like a DCNR grant, they tell you what has to be on the sign.
Yeah.
And then it's the applicant
Responsibility.
that is responsible for putting a sign up.
Wow.
That's what it is, yeah.
But I think DCNR, it's a project acknowledgement sign,
Yeah.
and they give you a template. And you-
They tell, I don't know about the template. They tell you what language they want. I know in Monroe County, there was actually a template so that like, everybody would know, here's the. It's not, so the signs would all look similar, but you know, you had like what you needed to take to the sign person to say, yeah, this is like, I need a sign that's this size that.
Yeah. It has the height that the letters need to be and what words need to be on.
So it has like instructions as
Yeah, it has
to.
instructions.
Right,
as how
but
to
it's not a
make it.
sign that's provided by.
Yeah, and it's
the
not a
open space
template.
program. It's the directions to create the sign, basically.
Yeah, and it also says like, if you are using another funding source, like you can have it match theirs, or you can have it match like the area.
I don't know if we put
I
in the
should have
guidelines,
asked
we
that
did have, we
programming.
talked about signage
I think we
separately than the
But,
guidelines.
but we.
Yeah, that's a different sign.
We specify our,
I think it says the
we went through a
logo.
lot of pain to get that logo.
To be on.
Yeah.
I should go grab the manual too.
It's 2, 3 meetings, wasn't it?
Yeah.
2 or 3 minutes, now you want to wipe
No, I think there's two different signs we should be talking about. That's it. With the one that the acknowledgement sign for the grant, but then the other one is the county's sign that that shows that this property is part of the county open space network.
Right, just like farmland has its own sign.
So should there be 2 different signs?
I think that would be cool.
I agree.
They can be installed together, but it should be two different signs.
But then I guess my question is, if there's a sign that the county is producing, where does that money
Yeah, are
coming
we
from?
paying for it? Who's paying for the sign that we give them? Like we are then, right?
Who paid for the signs for the farmland program?
County does. County.
Then I think it should be the same. It can come out of these funds, but it should be the same. It's a minimal cost.
But I don't know, can we just do that? Or like, do we
I
just?
have to take a look
Targets,
at
then
all
you
that,
gotta replace it.
the cost and everything.
We already paid over.
Cause yeah, all-
Farmland one,
for approval.
there was a bunch of them when I came in, so I didn't have to order any new one till now. Now I gotta order new ones, so we're gonna have to look into all that and see what the cost is and how it would done.
Cause then, yeah, like our next meeting can be planning that sign. I'll bring in a bunch of drafts. I know I made a bunch of drafts a while ago and I haven't touched them since, but like that can be a next time thing. But cause we don't need it yet, luckily. Yeah, so if we wanna have 2 different ones.
Like the projects that are approved once they're done, I think we should really be in touch with the people now to start planning like some kind of like a kickoff event to show what has happened here.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
Especially the first one.
Yeah, especially the first one, I
Yeah.
mean.
Anna should talk to Jack, but I know when the state of Pennsylvania accepts land as they're doing in that case, they sort of have a built-in sort of PR. They show up, I don't know if they cut a ribbon or trim a vine or hug a tree, but I mean, Jack's worked with them and I imagine Don has too. So
Well, our
they're
communications
aware
department usually
that
does
the
that, so I don't
project
personally do that.
Do they have like food, like a, sort of like that type of thing, like food truck?
no, but
I'm just wondering.
A food truck, that's a good idea though.
the they'll come out with their own photographers and PR people. They have a process in place to.
Yeah, they can
to-
set up a podium and invite media and a bunch of that and
Yeah.
have a press release.
They're not big on refreshments, but they're big on making sure the press release is done. But the local hosts can provide refreshments.
Really, yeah.
Well, the one I remember the most is Don can give the details. It was the Klondike property up in the Poconos. And of course, we had to have Klondike bars.
Oh,
Well, that was one that Wildlands coordinated and it had the state folks because it went to the game commission. So it had people from DCNR, it had representatives from all of the funders. It had, the podium, there was a tent. Cause it was rainy and yeah, I don't even remember the Klondike bars, but that tracks. You remember the Klondike bars?
I'm sure they had all the like cigarettes
They were there.
and all.
Yeah, but that was something that like our communications department arranged for that, our development
Yeah.
communications, that wasn't
Possibly
something
out of
that
government.
like falls onto the
I mean, the
land
executive director. of
department.
the game
And I'm not, and I don't know how it works at Natural Lands. I assume that they probably have their communications.
Yeah,
folks
we'll work with you. As soon as I think Anna knows more than I do about the settlement date for this property, and that's as it should be, but I'll mention to him and Anna should feel free to mention to him and
Yeah.
happy
Oh.
to help with that.
I'll reach out to him and like make sure he keeps us looped in, and I'll loop you guys in for when that's happening.
And
Cause
it-
yeah, I'm sure.
It's
they'll
likely
set
that it could
up.
be a couple of months after closing, just
Yeah.
because of trying to organize
Sure.
everything. So it
Mhm.
probably, and again,
I think
you-
time
like
to
Ann
decide.
reiterated that at the land trust level, we don't like to announce anything, or, you can certainly plan ahead, but you don't want to make firm plans until you know property's
Right.
all, certainly closed, because lots of times things happen and things get pushed back. So
Have a projection type
Yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
you want to be ready, but you can't nail things down until the project actually closes.
We need to know the commissioner's schedule too, to fit that in.
Okay, on to number 6, review the process and procedure to recommend applications to the Commissioner's office. So, and
Okay, so.
we'll
I
just start it out.
Sure, so I think, your advisors and I kind of recommend submitting the project for review and board action all at once. And then if they have questions and they want to review things, they kind of put that in writing. And that comes to me and you guys and the applicant. All or both. I think that's pretty much what I was thinking. Devils, do you have anything to add?
So I think, we just need to have like a process, because right now, the first time around, there was not the best communication on what's supposed to happen and how. So I think Anna's just looking for, let's have a written process so everybody's on the same page and know how these things are gonna work as we move forward with these projects.
Well, do we need a motion to do that? or-
Well, my question is to Commissioners, if, Mike, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but
I'm used to it.
would you want a period of time to review?
Yes.
Not that they're both together at the same time.
Yes. we would.
So
So
you're
I think that's-
thinking 1 month, send it to you as a review form, and then know that the next month we would look to get.
Right, I think you got it set, like, we're gonna send you this application, this has been approved by, this is what was, and then have a question and answer, a question period of 15, 30 days that county commissioner, I'd say 30 days, a month is.
So
To
you
get
can
back-
do your due diligence.
And then if there's not any action from the commissioners at that point, or it's tabled, or those questions aren't, then you need to decide whether or not you want to send a board action. And then that's where I think the issue here came in is, if you send it to the commissioners, sometimes we table, you're trying to figure stuff out, there's a lot of questions back and forth. So if you hold your hands to that, but once it goes to board action, it's either yes or no. So you gotta sometimes watch when you're gonna ask for board action, because you may wanna give a longer period. So setting some timelines of what you're looking for. So if you know you need something, like here, we had a funding issue going away. Well, that was a 2.5-year process, if not longer, getting to that point. The fact that you're sitting in a meeting, and if you don't make a decision today, we're gonna tentatively lose $800,000 is not a position that myself or any of the commissioners wish to be in. So there was a learning curve there. I think we all got that.
So with minimal questions, 30 days is good. With the potential for something to have a lot of questions, I don't know that it would be good to say, okay, we're gonna submit it in the very next month, we're gonna submit the action, like Mike's saying. So I think that in certain circumstances, that would be great. We could say, okay, we sent it up to them for review, they like it. We sent it back, everything looks good, then we could that next month say, okay, well, let's take action on it, right?
I think the answer is you send the approval. It was approved by the board. This was approved. Now we're giving it for review of the commissioners. We're asking you to get back to us within 30 to 45 days.
In writing.
If nobody gets back to you from the commissioners, or you don't hear anything, then you come in here and you say, all right, now we're gonna ask for board action. And that puts it to the end. That gives commissioners enough time to begin review. Now, that process can go on longer than 30 to 45 days. But if you don't hear nothing within 30 to 45 days, and your opinion is, well, the commissioners, 1, don't have any questions, or 2, the questions that we got back to them are now under review but to kind of leave it in limbo, it kind of, it holds everybody. It puts you at the point that you gotta get a yes or no, and it puts the commissioners in a position that we need to give you a yes or no. Or we need to tell you why we would be saying no, but you may be able to change that to a yes, or vice versa.
So Anna would be a key component to that whole process.
Absolutely, yeah.
Would it make sense for you to have projects that we're going to review at the same time before we even approve them?
I think it
So
would,
that if you did have questions, once we approved it, it would be a lot quicker. I mean, it's not like we're gonna
I
get
think the
30
key-
a month.
I think the key to all of it is communication. So like we try to get commissioners to meetings and you know them and stuff, but there's a lot that sometimes you just don't get to. So having us know that, hey, we've received 3 applications, this is where it's from, we're currently under the review process. That already gives the commissioners a heads up that it's under review. So now the commissioners can say, okay, now we're waiting to see if it gets through the review process and you start getting your questions ahead of time. So it does make.
A summary sheet, 1 page, here's a project that's coming through, it's this many acres, this is the location, blah, blah, blah. You've already got some of the basic information that
Right.
if questions are gonna come up,
Like here's a,
then they
and
can
I'll,
get back to
I don't wanna
you.
mix apples and oranges here, but here's a good example. Just this past week, there was, every time we sit in the commission, we kind of like, what farms are already preserved? What farms are in the process of being preserved? And what farms could be in the chute? We never had a list. We didn't have, the commissioners had no list. So I literally came down here with Dave and we have a list of those 3 processes. But it was never like thought of, and I'm not knocking, so please don't take it that way, but it was never thought of like, well, where is this? So now the commissioners actually, well, I didn't remember, I remember doing that farm. Oh, I thought that farm, I didn't know that one was, so having that information available on is what I'm trying to say to you. So if you get 3 applications saying ahead of time, this is what we're gonna review or not review, helps us.
And again, I don't wanna throw a wrench here, but I'm thinking back and I know Dan helped with writing the bylaws. I think the way the bylaws are set up is this board does the ranking and reviewing first, and then decides if they're gonna recommend it for funding to the commissioners. So it is kind of a layered process.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that you have to, I mean, it's gonna come back to you regardless for whatever's going on. I mean, and then it's nice to know that, and I can tell you, sitting as a commissioner, it's nice if you say to me, well, the open space board voted unanimously for this project. Or the open space board was split with some issues. The more information I have makes my decision easier when trying to find that funding, because ultimately, in the end, the taxpayer is the one that's gonna pay for this.
And I think that's the way they went up
Mm-hmm.
this last time, the first time.
So I have a question too, Commissioner. So as far as the funding, do you guys, like, have you been in touch with financial institutions? Okay, like,
Yes, yes.
just if
And,
somebody's willing to work with you?
yes, and that's gonna be going out for, there's process to all of that. But ultimately, the referendum said, that the residents have agreed to be taxed for that. And that's the biggest concern the commissioners have with that is, obviously, we had that meeting where we got everybody together and kind of and I think that was a very good informational as to how it goes off. And how that drawdown has to happen so that, it's always good, let's just say it this way, it's always good to vote for something, but then now we gotta pay for it. And that's where push comes to shove.
But I think that.
So we are looking at that. That is in the process. That's all Dave will tell you. We had many meetings with finance, Jeff. And, that's being worked through.
But it would be unfair for us to say, okay, we want you to decide on this now and to send it to you. You want that review period,
Yes,
for sure.
definitely. That's a definite. But I also wanted that you're held to the fire where we can't just not answer the phone or not answer an email or avoid it for 6 months and you're left here hanging with not knowing what to do. You gotta we get elected to make a decision.
Could there be like, and like in my world, there's always like a chain of operation, like on the stuff that comes from us. we'll have the status of it marked off like it's approved. Then the next step, Anna gets it to you for review, and then you see each one would have what point it is in the review to completion. You know, when all those boxes get checked, you could visually see where it's at in the process. And
I mean, that helps. I mean, any information you can get helps. And we don't want to get involved. Obviously, that's why we have a board for you to go through that process. So we don't want to get into interfering with your process. But it's nice to know how far along the process is. You know, and it's almost like a zoning board. The boroughs, townships have zoning boards to take care of that, so that there is a process. Ultimately, in the end, you have to make the decision, but it's nice to, I just don't want to be digging at the last minute to figure out how we're gonna do this.
And not to get into the weeds, but has it been decided with the taxing and the debt service? Is this gonna be lumped into the other county debt service, or is it gonna be a separate line item on the tax bills we receive?
I think you will, that has not been decided, so let's just put it to that. I mean, I think you,
I'm thinking if it is a separate one, and that's when the PR needs to kick in with, so that people see, oh, the county just work this project and preserve this land. So they make a connection with that extra $15 they're paying in their tax bill is connected to something that was accomplished. We could try to synchronize that.
Can I go back one step to what we were just talking about before? Commissioner Sifranco, is it valuable for the commissioners to know that we did not approve certain projects, that we had projects and did not approve them for funding or recommend them for funding to the commissioners? Would you like say we have 3 projects and we recommend 2 and there's one we didn't recommend? Is that information that you would like to have?
absolutely.
Okay,
I think that's a great idea, and I think that the taxpayer needs to know that.
yeah,
That
that's,
you're not just, you know, that they gave you the authority or gave us the authority to tax them to pay for something. They need to know that you're acting responsible on their behalf and not just giving everybody money for no apparent reason. So they need to know that there's definitely a checks and balance happening. I
well
would-
said.
I would welcome that.
Yeah, well said, and that's why I asked the question. I thought that would be valuable.
And same question. Thanks, Dan, for asking that.
And not to say that there would
I did.
never be anything, a project that wasn't funded, but I would also hope that, you know, if the applicant in working with Anna to make sure it's a good project, that only good projects are coming forward, so that wouldn't happen very frequently that a project came in that didn't meet all the criteria or that wasn't getting scored well. But certainly it could happen and it would be good for everybody to know that, but.
But the financial piece is not part of our criteria at this point, so.
No, we're talking about the criteria of how strong the application is
Right.
and the content of it.
Yeah.
And if there's some weak points and we're not gonna, the board's not gonna recommend it for funding, then you have a why. Why it's not going any further, and the commissioners will have the why in case they get questioned, which they probably will. It's just like with DCNR, when I was a regional advisor, if a project wasn't funded, many times I got a call from the applicant and ask what was deficient in the application, or what could have done better for the next time, you know, and they ask for that feedback, and I guess it's important we give them that feedback.
But it could fail at Anna's level too, so before it even comes to the board,
Yeah.
us, it could already fail at her level, and that would come back to you as well.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm wondering, I guess I don't even know this, like, would I still bring it to you guys?
No.
No, like. I'm
No,
not
I don't
telling
think
you.
so.
More see
But
that,
that's just like internal.
yeah, the times that would happen that an application would come in and it wouldn't be recommended would probably be because things that were like right on the cusp. That
Yeah.
you couldn't make that decision of, oh, this isn't good enough to bring to the board, or that, you know,
Okay.
there are things, I would think there would be things that just are kind of on the cusp. Maybe it's good enough, maybe it's not. It really needs, you know, the board to review it to determine that, because I'm sure there's gonna be some projects like that.
Yeah.
Or I mean, at some point we could get to the I don't know, it would be great if this happened, but I don't know if it probably won't, but there's a bunch of projects all at once, and there's just no way to fund them all at the same time.
Yeah.
This is why you're called the open space director. There's a screen that's gonna say that, you know, okay, there were 4 applications and 3 of them don't even fall on the table to even bring, but you can come in and say, hey, I got 4 applications, 3 fell off, this is why, and this is the one we're going with. That's the unfortunate of the position you're in, if you wanna call it that way, but that is part of that job. And, you know,
Okay. So.
Everybody good?
Thank you.
All right, on to further business. Anybody have anything else to add?
Well, back to the last
Okay.
thing, did we need to motion for anything? Like, we're just gonna,
I think it's an understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's more of an understanding.
Maybe it could be when you're
Yeah.
sending that recommendation, you
Yeah.
actually in
Yeah.
the recommendation write that, you know, we're submitting this to the
Mhm.
Open Space Advisory Board has recommended this for funding, so we're sending it to review to the commissioners. And please let, in your case, me,
Yeah.
please let me know if there are any questions within the next 30 days so that we can try to have them answered. So that then we can move forward with board action.
And like one of them just went. Does it even have to come back to us? It could Anna give that, okay, we're gonna call for decision on it.
Mhm.
And it doesn't even, I don't even see that it would need to come back to us for any reason.
Yeah,
If
But
we-
she
gotta
needs
get
to,
out of their
needs to have that
Right, that's what I'm
communication
saying.
though,
Yeah.
because I think
If-
she needs to
Yeah.
be the one that submits for board action, right? You guys,
Yeah.
she submits for board action, so that she needs to know when to pull the trigger on the next step. So if there aren't any questions, she reach out after the 30 days and they're like, no, we're good.
but it
Go ahead and
wouldn't-
submit it.
Wouldn't have to come back. to us. That's what
Yeah.
my
Yeah,
point
it doesn't have
was.
to come back to the Open Space
Yeah.
Advisory
Mhm.
Board.
No.
okay, yeah, that's.
part.
Yeah, I think the only time it would probably come back to the Open Space Advisory Board if there were serious questions and the commissioners
They
asked
wanted-
for it to go back
Mhm.
into discussion
This
because
is-
of X, Y,
yeah,
and
they
Z.
should
But
have all the pressure, that's.
generally, I would,
Everything.
yeah, generally, I would think that whatever the questions were, they'd go to Anna, she'd go to the applicant, get the questions answered back to the commissioners, and that would answer the question.
That's what we did this time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why you guys do a review process, hopefully to get any questions that the commissioners may have, you guys get them first and put them out there and get them answered. And then that's one thing that I did tell Anna when we were doing the last time. Any kind of questions that came up that were brought up conversation, make sure we put that out to the commissioners so that they could see that that conversation did take place and what was the responses to that.
Yeah, I think Mike and the other supervisor, our other commissioners want something handed to them with a lot of questions answered.
oh yeah, and I think one thing you need to caution yourself on is time keeps moving. People change, things change out. So this board may do this, next board may do that, this open space. But the reality of it is you can always get that person that never stops asking a question. And it happens, and it's a delay process. I mean, the Senate does it when they have a hearing. So you can push it on and off. That's where I think the board has to say, hey, you know what? We've answered the questions. This has just become redundant. It's time to call for board action. And then you roll your dice and that board at that time may say yes, or they may say no. But there has to be a time when you need to call for a decision. And then they can table and not do that, but that's how people vote.
Sounds good. All right, we can move on then.
So what's the timeline go before we close?
For natural lands,
What's happening next?
Or-
Calendar wise?
for both projects?
Friday,
Yeah, both projects.
Friday?
Yeah, so what's happening with both projects? now?
So the Resika acquisition should hopefully close by the spring of this year. I got their grant agreement sent out and I got it back signed from them in the mail. And I just got that sent up to the commissioners. It should have went up there today. So that is like on the way to be signed by the commissioners, and then it'll be already and sealed, and then I'll send that back to Jack, the applicant, and we'll move forward from there to go to settlement. And we'll have to work out the financial stuff and the paperwork, but we'll be working on that. And then
Like height and water.
that one, I didn't even get the grant agreement to Dawn yet, so.
So question, is there a reason why it's not signed before it goes to the awardee?
I'm not sure. I know like I gave Jack the grant agreement and had like his solicitor of natural lands, they changed some things. And then signed it and sent it back.
Okay.
So like we just had them make their changes and our solicitor looked at it and he was like, yeah, those are good from a legal standpoint.
I
And
just
then
wondered if there was
Jack's-
ever a discussion of like, because, you know, a grant agreement means if it's been approved, here's the
Mhm.
grant agreement. If you're agreeing to take the grant, sign it.
Mhm.
I don't know, it just makes me nervous that like, hey, we're moving forward, we got the grant and it hasn't been signed by the,
Okay.
but I don't know what the order of operations
Mhm.
should be on that.
That's just how we do
Okay.
our contract. We usually get
You get
our
the
both
person
solicitors
sign it
review it,
before
give
the-
it to,
Okay,
then have you sign it first and then the commissioner sign it last.
Yeah.
The grant agreement don't need to go through board action because they've already been approved and awarded and that it's just the formality of the signature.
Mhm. It'll be the date of the commissioners meeting. That's the date. But that's just not when it's signed by them. That's just how I was instructed to do it.
that's fine. I was just curious as to
Okay.
what the process was.
So both of our projects are approved now by the
Yep, for
commissioners?
funding.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, both of them.
For those of you that are in the room, it seems apparent that you've heard this already, but for those on Zoom, maybe not everybody knows what the commissioners did this morning. Commissioner Sefranco, would you care to announce that, or somebody in the room care to announce that?
I'll let Anna, she can announce it, sir.
This morning, the commissioners approved the Pine Run easement project. So both of the applications that came through our pilot round have been approved for funding, which I am just so excited about.
Thank you very much for all the work, Anna and Dave and Commissioner Sefranco. Thank you for your help with that.
Yeah, thank you guys, especially all the board members and advisors, Dan and Dennis and Dawn, of course. Yeah,
It's a team effort.
it definitely was. I'm happy we all got here.
Great job by the board. Yep.
Well, we're all very happy.
Hopefully the weather be nice, but it's all done.
Yeah.
That's- So have a nice day for our grand opening.
Yeah.
What I meant by schedule is like, we have an open application period.
Mhm.
Can you refresh my memory on that?
Oh, yeah, like the current application, this technically the spring 2025 grant round is open right now until March 30th or 31st. I forget the last day of March right now.
Monday, the 31st.
Yes, it's Monday, the 31st. Thank you. So yeah. I haven't heard of anything though, still, so I'm not sure that anything will come in, but it's open. The webinar is out there.
And how do we announce that? Or haven't we, or
Well, I think she announced it when she sent out the
Yeah,
flyer.
the first initial
the flyer mentioned that?
information sheet.
Okay,
Flyer, yeah, about the webinar said that. And then we had like a press release up on the website about the webinar happening. But we like technically had to take that down. Or we would just do the recording to cancel the webinar. So I guess I could put that back up. I think that would be okay. Since the recording is out there now and then that says it on, but that's technically all we've done. I mean, I can let like the Times News know.
no, I just was curious.
Yeah, it should be on the website, on the
Yeah,
county
it's on the
website
website.
someplace, just so if somebody went there, they'd know.
Yeah, and I can talk to the IT tomorrow about like maybe just adding the spot that says like a thing of text that says
Yeah,
the
we
grant
can
round
have a
is now
tab or
open. Mhm.
information.
Yeah,
More work for Anna, but just should we be thinking when we open a grant round to send an email to all the previous applicants, the land trust and the municipalities to say there's a grant round open?
We can, I send them the information about the webinar,
Mm-hmm.
attach the flyer to that, and the flyer says the grant round will be open.
Okay, then they have it already.
Yeah, so I like kind of do that. I can make sure that I say just in the email text the grant round. I might already do that. I don't quite remember. But yeah, I'll make sure that that's in there.
That's good. And the land trusts get that as well?
I made sure to send it to them too.
Yeah, especially ones that have applied before, and as that goes on, there might be others that apply. Thank you.
Any further business?
Oh, my further business was that the Pine Run project was approved for funding today. And then, okay, so this was talked about at the commissioners meeting today. So they kind of want to know if you guys would like to recommend placing a percentage cap on funding amounts from the county for municipal water authorities. To prevent like all of the funding from being used by the water authorities. So the Pine Run easement project funding from the county was 30% of their total project cost, right? Yes. So they were kind of thinking like maybe the cap would be around 30% or less for water authorities, and that would be something we just add as like to the program manual or just as a program policy. Yeah.
So there was concern from the Board of Commissioners that now that the Pine Run project, which is a municipal water authority, is approved, that all the other municipal water authorities in the county will be coming after this funding and exhaust the open space funding.
No,
And so they had asked Anna to bring back to you, can you guys make a recommendation to, or would you be willing to discuss a recommendation to limit the amount of funding that can go towards water authority projects?
So my question is, it's not per project, it's overall, period?
No, I
No.
think
Just
the
for water?
idea was that if another
How would
water
that be?
authority project were to come in, that instead of 50% of the project cost, that the grant would only cover 30% of the project cost.
The major concern and the commissioners asked Anna to bring it to the board tonight, really for board action. They did a map and there's 14 other water authorities that have land. And the concern was if once they approved the Lehighton Water Authority and we explained the uniqueness of that property and why it ranked high by this board and all of that, and they agreed to fund it. So that's a done deal, but they're concerned that it's gonna open the floodgates for all these other water authorities, and concerned that the funding could get eaten up by these 14 other water authorities coming in with projects. And of course, there's no way of knowing. We don't know if they will or not. We don't know how long that will take. But I think that was just a general concern.
So
Question on that. I mean, the Lehighton Water Authority project was an additional easement, not an outright purchase. Is the thought process that the other ones would probably also go that way? Because that would be if it's an outright purchase, it's going to be considerably different math in terms of the valuation of the land. So in terms of a cap, like understand that idea, but is the cap a different conversation between a conservation easement and an actual land acquisition, because you're going to have considerably different economies of scale with the value of those projects?
Yeah, that was not delineated or discussed at the commissioners meeting this morning, the easement as opposed to fee simple. It was just that, the feeling was that Lehighton Water Authority is gonna come in to some money, and are the others gonna look at this as a cash cow
Right.
to try to preserve their land? And I think in my mind, I was thinking easements, that they would want to do easements. But
Yeah, and my comment when we voted on it the last time was the cost to the county per acre for that easement was a pretty great deal. So in terms of having a cap on an easement value at a 30%, it probably sounds reasonable. But that's 30% of the project value. Is then, you know, do we also need to maybe think about, maybe not, it's not an action for today, but what would a cap look like for, you know, an outright acquisition? Because that might be a much larger number. Even though it might be 30% of a project, it might be a larger value of the money that we have for this program.
I think the concern by the commissioners was the outflow.
Mhm. Yeah,
that
that's what I mean.
Projects too quickly, and it would eat up a lot of the money. And so to try to put the brakes on that was, well, since we're giving Lehigh Water Authority 30%, let's stick with that 30% for any future applications that would come in from water authorities. That's,
Mhm. That's what I mean, is it a 30% on an easement and it's a 15 or 20% on if it's an acquisition? Because that might be a much larger number in terms of the valuation of the project. So does that help not diminish the fund too fast because it's going to be it's a different value proposition?
I think my concern with that, because yeah, this is a much more complicated issue, because I see what you're saying of, you know, it's obviously it costs more to buy out land outright, but if a water authority is actually selling their land, it could very easily be going to a developer. So I don't.
For sure.
I'd be concerned that you'd want to put a cap on that at all, because it's just like any other land that's out there for sale that could go to a developer, and we're trying to prevent, or we're trying to guide protection to the areas that need to be protected so that those areas don't get developed and so the development goes into the proper areas.
You know, this is a little too complicated for us to do in 12 minutes tonight. I propose on this issue that perhaps Anna and Dave, in consultation with the advisors, the commissioners, whomever, they come back to the next meeting with a proposal on this.
I think that my question to send to the commissioners, were they talking about the 30% per project or 30% of open space money that will be going out?
no, it was per project. I mean, that's
Because
my
30%
understanding what Wayne
per
was
project could get 100% of the money.
I think, try to,
None of us know if
it's
anybody.
a discussion that needs to take place. But there were two things that have to be addressed there. One is, does anybody know how much property, land acreage is out there that is owned by municipal authorities in Carbon County? 22,000 acres. It's a pretty good chunk of pie. 11,000 of which is Bethel Water Authority. So you have Bethel Water Authority, Hazelton Water Authority, Tamaqua Water Authority that all own land in Carbon County. If they come to you and begin asking you to put their parts of their plan in open space, while that's what you want, the commissioner's opinion was, I don't think the taxpayers of Carbon County voted to give money to Hazelton Water Authority.
I don't agree, they didn't put in.
And that's a concern that the commissioners have. And that's cutting right to the chase. I mean, there's no other, you know, because if they do come, obviously they gotta go through the review process. They have to meet all of that and all of that it is. But it was a big hump for the commissioners to get over because, you know, municipal in commissioners' eyes, and I'll speak as here, their view was that the municipal land is already protected because it's owned by the authorities. So if the authorities are going to sell the land, that's their prerogative. But yet we're trying to protect that land because that's what the taxpayer wanted. And that's why at the beginning of this meeting, it was very imperative that the Lehigh Water Authority chose to basically tie the hands of Future. And that's why it's key that you work together with that. But with that also being said, if every water authority in the county that has land here comes before this board and says, here it is, and there's an amount of, and you don't know that, Dennis is absent, nor do the commissioners, and they all fit the criteria. what's your answer back as to why you didn't approve it?
Did anybody ever ask the authorities like Lehighton? They're trying to tap the cash cow by putting part of left-hand Pine Run in to be reserved with this money. Why are they letting all the prime ground along 903 out? Is that for future development? Can anybody give me an answer?
We were
No.
trying to strike a balance between protecting the most important water quality pieces, yet not completely tying the hands of future boards. And that was kind of the compromise of, hey, we're picking the parts that have the most Pine Run in them and that are most important for protection. And the piece along 930 doesn't, or 903 is, so we were trying to strike a balance there, because if we tried to go after everything, one, it would have been way more expensive, and two, they might not have gone for it. So we were trying to craft the best project that is best gonna protect water quality. So that's how we got to where we were.
It's how the negotiations rolled out.
I think that the commissioners are very wise asking this question, and I think a cap is in order. And in retrospect, with the Lehighton property, if we had had time to do this, and if we had it set up ahead of time, maybe there's not just a cap, but also a requirement of the water authority to contribute by way of a bargain sale toward it in a like amount to the county. So if the county's going to put in $300,000, the water authority has to lower the price of the sale by $300,000 to make it both the authority and the county putting in an equal amount to make this happen, not being a little lopsided. So again, this is a really complicated issue. It's a really important one. I really support what the commissioners are asking for, but I think we need to come up with a proposal and then come back to the board and have you react to a proposal rather than a committee trying to write something and it's going to end up, it's a long, arduous process that takes a long time to get there.
This is homework for the next meeting. If we can wait till the next.
Any other open space organizations are surrounding us that have water authorities?
Well, there's an easement held by the Nature Conservancy on Bethlehem Water Authority land. There's a number of water authority lands that have easements on them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in this case, one of the maps I provided showed that the area we're looking at, some of those properties surrounding it that are water authority had the Project 70 money, so they're already permanently protected, and we were trying to fill in the hole to make sure that whole area was permanently protected.
Yeah, I mean, this presents, when we first started, even with the bond referendum, with Dan and Lee and myself and Dawn, we probably calculated from a map, you can look at a map and calculate there is maybe 35,000 acres of forested property in Carbon County. And that's why, and even when we settled on the 10 million, it was like, well, we really need 30 or 40 million. But when we did the polling, we only felt comfortable going with 10. And so yeah, there's this Carbon County is a beautiful county with a lot of forest lands. And we may be presented with this down the road. And the commissioners were just concerned that we want to satisfy all the farms that are in the queue and keep getting money from the State Department of Agriculture. And we don't know what's gonna come in on the open space side.
But isn't it unfair to make one requirement for certain people, folks, and not the rest? So we're saying, if you're a water authority, we're all gonna do this. If you're a homeowner, we could maybe do something else. That, I don't know, that goes.
May I ask you this question? Do you feel that the people that went out and voted for open space wanted the land invested in preserving water authority property or open space property? Open space. So that's the question the commissioners had. Now, that's obviously I voted for this project because it met all the criteria before it. And the biggest thing is, had the commissioners had voted this down, we'd have lost, what was it, $800,000? And there was no way I could go back to a taxpayer in this county and tell them that I took a gamble on $800,000. I'm crazy, but I'm not that crazy. So, I mean, that was one of the biggest selling points that, we're complaining we don't have money. Now we had money and we threw money, and then to go back and not know if you're even gonna get the 800 and renegotiate, could have went down to 3. But the commissioners as a whole, is concerned on this. Because I'm not so sure, and I don't know if anybody is. I think when people talked about open space, like I wouldn't think, like, let's just take Lee Heighton out of the picture and say, well, Jim Thorpe, let's take that one, or take Panther. Did their boards or their water authorities have land preserved? That's taken care of. Well, what if they decide that they want to start developing, or they can get wells? But if you give us some money, and it's there, the opportunity's there, are you willing to do that? And taking what you say, why is one treated different than the other? Well, that's my question would be, sitting here as the Panther Valley Water Authority, why was one treated different than the other? So that's why we're looking like for some type of guideline as to that they're all treated fairly by project across the board from you. That there's not like, well, one got this, one got that, what makes it different, so that there's a fairness that everybody, if they wish to, can, and there may be some authorities that don't even want to do it. But I can tell you right now, if I was sitting on a water authority in any one of these boroughs right now that needed improvements, I'd be calling you tomorrow morning. I'm just saying it, I would, just because there's a funding opportunity and we need money. So you need to, I'm not downing it, I'm just saying that you gotta be ready for that.
Every project has to be looked at on its own merits as to where this land is it adjacent to public land? And even though we don't, and we're gonna end here, we gotta end here in 2 minutes, but something else to think about is the issue of this program does not require public access. The DCNR funding does require public access, and there's the whole philosophical discussion of public access to public benefit. If it's benefiting the clean water, do we still want, and what we have with Lee Heighton Water Authority is we have public access. So that 83% that voted for this, I often think of all the sportsmen's clubs we went to. If we could say that future generations can hike and hunt this property in perpetuity, that is a real impetus and a benefit. And we're not just putting a conservation easement on, but nobody could access the property.
But clean water is also a public benefit, Dennis.
Right, I know. That's what I said. That's what I said. So we get into that. That's something to think about between now and the next meeting.
And also too, it's also important to remember, especially when you're talking to anybody about this, it's not the water company that applied for the funding. Yes, they're getting the funding, but they needed wildland to come in and be the applicant and get the match. So all these water companies, yeah, they could say, I wanna do this. They're gonna have to find either a municipality or a conservancy to come in and be willing to take that on. And Don, I don't think you just walk up to any property and say, sure, we'll do it.
Well, no, I mean, the first thing besides the conservation value of the property, can we find funding?
Yeah,
And in this case, we were really lucky. We were able to catch the last part of the funding, the OSI funding. But that is gonna be no more. That program has ended. So finding matching funds for other water authority lands is difficult because it's very difficult, I think, as I mentioned before, to get DCNR fundings for conservation easements.
So, but we'll try to come up with a recommendation for next month on how to address this with the commissioner's concern.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Good seeing you all.
Thank you.
The new flip phone?
No.
No.